The field hospital on Epsilon 7 was organized chaos, a prefabricated structure designed to handle 50 casualties that currently held 3 times that many. Dr. Marcus Webb moved through the rows of wounded with practiced efficiency, his hands steady despite 3 days of minimal sleep. The Kravar assault on the colony had been devastating, and the casualties kept coming. "Doc," Corporal Jensen called from across the tent. "We need you here. Now." Marcus grabbed his medical kit and jogged over, his boots splashing through puddles of melted snow that leaked through the tent's damaged seams. The patient on the gurney was Thalashin, female mid-20s if he was reading her physiology correctly, with deep orange skin that had gone pale around her lips and fingertips. Her blonde hair was matted with blood, and the massive wound across her abdomen told him everything he needed to know. She was dying. "Shrapnel from the bombing," Jensen reported, his voice tight. "Caught her trying to evacuate civilians from the residential district. She's lost a lot of blood and her species. Doc, I don't know how to treat Thalashin physiology." "Neither do I," Marcus admitted, scanning her vitals on the portable monitor. What he saw made his stomach sink. Her internal injuries were catastrophic. Even if she'd been human, even if they'd been in a state-of-the-art hospital instead of a field tent, her chances would have been minimal. Here, with limited supplies and no knowledge of Thalashin medicine, they were non-existent. The woman's violet eyes fluttered open, focusing on Marcus with difficulty. She said something in Thalashin, the words like flowing water. "I don't understand," Marcus said gently, wishing desperately that the translators hadn't been destroyed in the first wave of attacks. "I'm sorry I don't speak your language." She tried again, her voice weaker, and this time she lifted her hand, the movement clearly causing her agony, and touched her ring finger. Then she made a gesture, her hands coming together and fingers interlacing. Marcus understood immediately. She wanted to know if she was married. "No," he said softly, shaking his head and pointing to his own bare ring finger. "No ring, not married." Her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. She said something else, more urgent now, and repeated the gesture, touching her ring finger, interlacing her hands. "I think," Jensen said quietly, "I think she's saying she wants to be married before she—" Marcus felt his chest tight. He'd seen a lot of death in his 20 years as a military doctor. He'd held soldiers as they died, heard their last words, watched the light fade from their eyes, but this was different somehow. This woman, this alien he'd never met before, was dying alone on a foreign world, and her last wish was to experience something she'd never had. "Get me a translator," Marcus ordered. "There has to be one working somewhere in this camp." "Doc, we don't have time." "Find one," Marcus snapped. Then more gently, "Please, Jensen, she deserves to be heard." While Jensen ran off, Marcus knelt beside the gurney and took the woman's hand. It was cold, her circulation failing as her body shut down. She gripped his fingers with surprising strength, her violet eyes pleading. "I'm Marcus," he said, knowing she couldn't understand but needing to say something. "I'm going to stay with you. You're not alone, I promise." She seemed to take comfort from his tone, if not his words. She squeezed his hand and tried to speak again, but her voice was fading. Jensen returned 5 minutes later with a battered tablet. "Found this in the command tent. Batteries at 12%, but the translation software still works." Marcus positioned the tablet where the woman could see it. "Can you tell me your name?" The woman spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. The tablet processed her words, text appearing in English. Liara, my name is Liara Dulsana. Hello, Liara, Marcus said, watching his words appear in Thalashan's script on the screen. I'm Dr. Marcus Webb. I'm going to do everything I can to help you. She smiled sadly, and when she spoke, the tablet translated. You cannot help me. I am dying. I know this, but before I die, I have one wish. Tell me, Marcus said. I want to be married, Liara's words appeared on screen. It is our custom. To die unmarried is to die incomplete, to never reach the Hall of Ancestors. But more than custom, I always dreamed of a wedding, of someone choosing me, promising to stand beside me. I know it is foolish to want this now at the end, but I cannot help it. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Around them, the field hospital continued its frantic work, medics shouting, equipment beeping, the constant background noise of war and suffering. But in this small space beside Liara's gurney, everything else faded away. It's not foolish, he said quietly. Everyone deserves to be chosen. Everyone deserves to know they mattered to someone. Liara's tears flowed more freely. There is no one. My family is dead. My intended was killed in the first attack. I am alone on this world, dying among strangers. An idea formed in Marcus's mind, crazy, impulsive, probably violating a dozen regulations. But looking at Liara's face, at the desperate hope mixed with resignation in her violet eyes, he knew he was going to do it anyway. What if you weren't alone? He asked. What if I married you? Liara stared at him, her eyes widening. Around them, the medical staff had gone quiet, everyone within earshot turning to look. Doc, Jensen said carefully, what are you doing? Something right, Marcus replied. He looked back at Liara. I know we just met. I know this is insane, but if your last wish is to be married, to know that someone chose you, then I choose you, Liara. Let me give you this. Liara's words came haltingly through the translator. You would do this for a stranger, for an alien you will know only for minutes. Yes, Marcus said simply, because everyone deserves to die knowing they were loved, even if it's just for a little while. She sobbed once, then nodded. Yes, please, I accept. Marcus turned to the stunned medical staff. Someone get me Commander Petrov. He's authorized to perform field marriages for legal purposes. And someone, he paused, looking around the sparse medical tent. Someone find me something that can be a ring, please. The next 10 minutes were a blur of activity. Commander Petrov arrived, splattered with mud and looking exhausted, but his expression softened when Marcus explained the situation. You're sure about this, Doc? Completely, Marcus replied. It'll be legally binding, you know, even if she, Petrov trailed off. Even after, you'll technically be a widower. I understand. Corporal Jensen pressed something into Marcus's hand, a small ring made from twisted wire, probably pulled from a damaged radio. It's not much, he said, but it's all I could find. It's perfect, Marcus said. They gathered around Liara's gurney, Commander Petrov, Corporal Jensen, 2 nurses, and a handful of walking wounded who'd heard what was happening and insisted on bearing witness. Someone had found a Thalashan cultural database and was frantically reading through wedding customs on a tablet. In Thalashan tradition, one of the nurses read aloud, the groom must speak 3 promises. First, I choose you above all others. Second, I will stand with you until the waters still. Third, in this life or the next, you are mine and I am yours. Marcus knelt beside Liara's gurney and took her hand. Looking into her violet eyes, he spoke slowly so the translator could keep up. I choose you above all others, Liara Dulsana. Tears streamed down her face as his words appeared in Thalashan on the tablet screen. I will stand with you until the waters still. Her grip on his hand tightened. In this life or the next, you are mine and I am yours. Liara's voice was barely audible as she spoke her response, but the tablet translated clearly. I accept your promises, Marcus Webb. I choose you. I will stand with you. In this life or the next, you are mine and I am yours. Commander Petrov cleared his throat. Then by the authority vested in me by the Earth Defense Force and recognized under interstellar law, I pronounce you married. Marcus, you may. Well, you may kiss your bride. Marcus leaned down carefully, mindful of Liara's injuries, and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. When he pulled back, she was smiling, a genuine, radiant expression that transformed her pain-etched features. He slid the makeshift wire ring onto her finger. It's beautiful, she whispered through the translator. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for making me complete. Marcus settled beside her, holding her hand as her breathing grew more labored. The medical monitors showed her vital signs deteriorating rapidly. Minutes, maybe less. Tell me about yourself, he said quietly. Tell me about Liara. I want to know who my wife is. She smiled at the word wife. Through the translator, her words came in fragments as her strength faded. I was a teacher. Children. I loved teaching children, showed them the stars, told them about the worlds beyond Thalassia. I always dreamed of traveling, seeing other species, learning their stories. You would have been a wonderful traveler, Marcus said. You have kind eyes, curious eyes. My mother, she made the most beautiful songs. She would sing while cooking. I cannot sing, but I tried. My students laughed, but kindly, with love. Marcus found himself smiling through his tears. I bet your students adored you. I hope they remember me. I hope someone tells them that I died trying to save others, that I mattered. You mattered, Marcus said firmly. You matter, Liara, to your students, to the people you saved, to me. You are my wife and you matter. She squeezed his hand weakly. Tell me about you, about my husband. Marcus talked, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. He told her about growing up in rural Montana, about his sister who'd become a pilot, about his love of old movies and hiking trails. He told her about medical school, about the first patient he'd saved and the first one he'd lost. He talked about everything and nothing, giving her his life story in the precious minutes they had left. You are a good man, Liara whispered. I am glad my last act was marrying you. I'm glad too, Marcus said honestly. I never thought I'd get married in a field hospital during a war, but I can't imagine a more important marriage than this. You honored me by accepting, Liara. Her breathing was becoming erratic now, her grip on his hand weakening. The medical monitors were screaming warnings, but Marcus waved off the nurses who moved to intervene. There was nothing to be done. This was just about being present, about making sure she didn't die alone. Marcus, she breathed, my husband, will you do one more thing? Anything, he promised. Sing to me, please. I cannot die in silence. Marcus's throat closed up. I'm not a good singer, he managed. Please. So Marcus sang. His mother's favorite lullaby, the one she'd sung to him as a child. His voice was rough, cracking with emotion, probably completely off-key. But he sang it anyway, holding his dying wife's hand in a field hospital on an alien world, giving her the one thing she'd asked for. Liara's eyes stayed fixed on his face, and the smile never left her lips. When the song ended, she whispered one last message. Thank you for being my husband. Thank you for letting me die. Loved. You were always loved, Marcus said. From the moment I met you, I love you, Liara. She took one more breath, released it slowly, and was gone. The medical monitor flatlined. The tent fell silent except for the sounds of distant artillery and someone crying softly. Marcus stayed beside her for a long moment, still holding her hand, the wire ring glinting on her finger. Then gently he closed her eyes and pulled the sheet up to cover her face. "I'm sorry, Doc," Jensen said quietly. "Don't be," Marcus replied, his voice hoarse. "She got what she wanted. She died complete." The war on Epsilon 7 lasted another 3 weeks. When it was finally over, Marcus organized Liara's funeral personally. He used the Thalashan database to ensure everything was done according to her culture's customs, even managing to contact a Thalashan chaplain who performed the rites remotely. At the burial, Marcus stood alone beside the grave, looking at the simple marker they'd erected. It read Liara Thulsana Webb, teacher, hero, beloved wife. Commander Petrov found him there an hour later. "You added your name to hers," he observed. "She was my wife," Marcus said simply. "Even if it was only for 20 minutes, that meant something." "The Thalashan government wants to meet you," Petrov said. "They heard about what you did. Apparently it's caused quite a stir in their culture, the human doctor who married a dying stranger to honor her last wish." "I don't want recognition," Marcus said. "I just wanted her to have peace." "I know, but you should know her family survived. They were in a different evacuation convoy. When they learned what you did for her, Petrov paused. "They want to adopt you, formally, make you part of their family according to Thalashan law." Marcus stared at him. "What? You married into their family. Technically, that makes you their family too. They said that Liara died with dignity and love because of you, and they want to honor that by bringing you into their lineage." Marcus looked back at the grave, at the name Webb carved beside Thulsana. He thought about Liara's smile when he'd slipped the wire ring onto her finger, about the way she'd called him husband with such gratitude and joy. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "I'd like to be part of her family, to keep her memory alive." 5 years later, Marcus stood in a Thalashan temple on their homeworld, surrounded by Liara's extended family. They were celebrating the Festival of Remembrance, honoring those who had passed into the Hall of Ancestors. Liara's youngest niece, a girl of perhaps 7, tugged on his sleeve. "Uncle Marcus, will you tell us the story again? About how you married Aunt Liara?" Marcus smiled, lifting the child into his arms. Around him, the family gathered close. He'd told this story dozens of times, but it never got easier. "Your Aunt Liara was the bravest person I ever met," he began. "She was hurt very badly, and she knew she was dying, but instead of being afraid, she thought about what she wanted most in the world. She wanted to be married," the little girl said, having heard the story before. "She did," Marcus confirmed. "Because in her heart, she believed that being chosen, being loved, was what made life complete, so I chose her. I married her right there in that field hospital, and for 20 minutes she was my wife." "Was she happy?" the girl asked. Marcus thought about Liara's smile, about the peace in her violet eyes as she'd slipped away. "She was very happy. She died knowing she was loved, and that little one is all any of us can really hope for." The family was quiet for a moment. Then Liara's mother, Marcus's mother-in-law by adoption, stepped forward and placed her hand over her heart in the traditional gesture of respect. "You gave our daughter the greatest gift," she said. "Not just marriage, but the knowledge that she was worth choosing, that even as a stranger, even in her darkest moment, she was seen and valued and loved. You gave her dignity, you gave her peace." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small box. We wanted you to have this. It was Liara's from when she was young. Inside was a simple pendant, a teacher's symbol in Thalashan culture. Marcus recognized it from the cultural databases he'd studied. She dreamed of giving this to her husband someday, Liara's mother explained. To the man she would marry and grow old with. She never got that future, but she did get to be married. She got to be a wife. And we want you to have this as a reminder that you were her husband, even if only briefly. You were the one she chose and who chose her in return. Marcus closed his fingers around the pendant, feeling the weight of it settle against his palm. On his own finger, he still wore the wire ring, the match to the one that had been buried with Liara. He'd never taken it off. I was honored to be her husband, he said quietly. Even for just 20 minutes, it was the most important thing I've ever done. It was the most important thing she ever did, too, Liara's mother replied. She died complete. She died loved. Because of you. That evening, Marcus stood on the balcony of the family estate, looking up at Thalash's 3 moons, the same moons Liara would have seen growing up, the same moons she'd taught her students about. He thought about a dying woman's last wish, about a wire ring pressed into a cold hand, about promises made in a field hospital that somehow lasted beyond death. He'd married Liara to give her peace. But in doing so, he'd given himself something too, a connection to a person who'd reminded him why he became a doctor in the first place. To ease suffering, to provide comfort, to ensure that people didn't have to face the darkness alone. She'd been dying. She'd wanted one thing, a wedding ring, and he'd given it to her along with love and dignity and the knowledge that she mattered. It wasn't much. Just 20 minutes out of a lifetime, but sometimes 20 minutes was enough to change everything. Sometimes the smallest gifts became the most precious, and sometimes marrying a stranger was the most meaningful thing a person could ever do. Marcus touched the pendant around his neck, Liara's final gift to him, and whispered into the night, I'm still your husband, Liara, in this life or the next. You are mine, and I am yours. In the distance, somewhere in the Thalashan afterlife, he liked to think she heard him, and smiled.